Someone hacked me! I get this comment all the time. Now, I'm not a tinfoil hat guy. I do things that are evidence-based. So in this video, I will tell you about how likely you are to get hacked and what are the methods that will be used to attack you. By the way, you don't always know if you've been hacked. So just because you don't know it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. This will also be good for teaching you how to recover from a hack and how to prevent one. And it's coming up next. To make it clear, I have hacking skills. So hopefully you will not consider the comments I make here as guesswork. There are also different threat sources and different risks depending on the device. This is called a threat model. For this video, we will assume that the threat applies to phones and computers. Specifically, our threat model will exclude any kind of government active surveillance. Just to make it clear, it is pretty hard to evade any kind of active surveillance since a state player has access to technology that would be hard to defend against. But it does take a lot of resources to accomplish this from the law enforcement side of things. So if you're an Edward Snowden or a John McAfee, you already know that you can't have a phone and that anytime you use the internet, you risk location discovery. Also, important people like Jeff Bezos or Angela Merkel of Germany can be attacked at the state player level, and the level of sophistication of these hacks is not something that an average person can expect or need to plan for. Some attacks require physical access to a device, and that raises the bar on what can be done. In this discussion, we will focus only on attacks that can be done remotely. Hacks can occur with your computer, your phone, your online accounts, and your network. These are all different. For now, we will discuss only hacks to devices, and I will cover network hacks in another video in the future. I also exclude hacks using the cell baseband modem. That kind of attack is discussed in my video, Who's Spying on Your Phone? It's more advanced as well. So to define the big picture, our threat model will assume that the hacker is a non-government entity doing remote attacks, and you may be a specific target or a target of opportunity. And the hacker's objective is to hack your phone or your computer. There are many reasons for a hack. In some cases, it is for exfiltration of data or stealing your information. In some cases, it is to track what you do, perhaps to surveil your actions or stalk you. This can be done by someone you know, for example, or some enemy. In the end, there has to be some benefit to the attacker, either financially or some information that benefits them. What I'm going to talk about are the most common hacking techniques used by hackers and how they might break into your computer. If you know how a hacker can break in, then you will be able to counter that, and we will discuss the solutions at the end of the video. Although I said I'm not covering network hacks and hacks of online accounts in this video, I often get the comment that my phone was hacked. But in reality, what was hacked was a cloud account, or the network was compromised. So it may not be completely clear where you've been attacked. In any case, I don't take a person's assessments literally. There are clues to where a hack can come from. One of the markers of a fake hack is the extortion email. This is not a real hack because the only proof that the extortion email will show is that they may know a password and email. Usually an older one if you're smart. This is because large companies from LinkedIn, Equifax, Adobe, and so on were already hacked in the past, and someone was able to get usernames and passwords from these companies. These lists are sold on the dark web. If you want to check out if you've been hacked through this method, it's easy to find out. Go to this website, haveibeenpwned.com. Check all of your email addresses. If you've been hacked through this method, you can expect to get extortion emails and possibly get your online accounts hacked without involving your phone or computer. From here on, let's focus on a direct attack on a phone or computer. First, a phone. Just in general, I'll tell you this. Phones are very difficult to hack. And I don't consider this a hack itself, but note this as a threat. Apps can exfiltrate data. Apps can steal data directly, such as locations, device fingerprints, MAC addresses, and contact lists, but it is very difficult to actually take control of the device. There are two reasons for the difficulty of actually hacking a phone. First, phones are hardened with security measures. For example, Android phones come with SE Linux, which is a security framework created by the NSA to limit the rights of an app to do things on your phone. If an app operates out of context, then it will be blocked. If it attempts to access areas that is not normally done by that type of app, then SE Linux will flag it. I'm sure iOS has something similar. Also, a phone doesn't let an app run directly on the device. For example, in an Android phone, the app runs inside Dalvik or Android Runtime, which is a virtual machine. So an app runs in isolation from other apps. The point of this explanation is that an app can only access data directly if you give it permission. So the first thing you have to do is remove strange permissions for unknown apps. For example, be concerned about apps getting location permissions, contact list permissions, and camera permissions. If it is not logical, then don't give the app permission. If the app needs a permission, then I would give it only permission while I'm using the app actively. I would never allow an app to have access to things like cameras in the background. I don't really call this a hack in itself because it's based more on people not having any security sense or understanding of threats. For example, many apps that use location data, like weather apps, are actually selling that data to third parties. They don't control your device, but you gave the app permissions without thought. By default, I give an app no permissions until it is necessary, and then I only give it permissions temporarily. On an Android, I also will use NetGuard, which is a firewall, to make sure that an app doesn't send data when I'm not using the app. This will be true of apps like Waze or Yelp that sends information in the background. So in general, apps may get access to data because of a cavalier attitude about permissions. So be careful with your app choices and be careful with permissions. I'll try to explain this in more detail in another video. Carrier installed remote control. One of the most feared hacks on a phone is the remote access Trojan, or RAT. A RAT can also be known as a keylogger. Basically, a RAT can remote control your device, even while you're not using a phone. Someone could turn it on, turn on the camera, install some other app, and observe you. In general, this is very hard to install on a phone without permission. Usually it requires root access, and you will notice that your OS is different, like a different version. This is not something that can be done easily remotely. However, the unfortunate fact is that there are RATs that have been installed in a legit way, and this is monumentally stupid. For example, a major phone carrier actually installed remote control software from LogMeIn into the phones under the guise of being a tech support tool. But basically, anyone who works for the carrier could in theory then go home and run LogMeIn to spy on some woman or watch some famous person. It turns out that this is even in the EULA, the End User License Agreement, of several of the phone carriers in the USA. Which means that phones sold by carriers instead of the phone manufacturer could be modified. This is also something I've discovered only on Android. This does not seem to be a threat on iOS. When I sell my de-Googled phone, I only use open source sources and generic versions, so none of these carrier-specific programs will be there. I discovered this a few years back, and I'm hoping that no secret RATs are still loaded onto newer phones. But the best way to check is to see if the latest EULA from the carrier says that they have loaded remote control software for tech support. If they did, then this is a way for hackers to come in, especially those with a contact at the carrier. Legit remote control apps. Another common and simple attack is for someone, typically a non-custodial parent, to give a device to a child but with the account ID of the parent. This can then be preloaded with any number of commercial remote control software that can allow the device to be taken over remotely. So if someone gives a family member a device, consider it with suspicion, especially if they don't give access to reset the device. There are many remote control apps that you can install with subscriptions. These subscriptions are typically under $100 a year for a device, and you can then monitor a phone. Though this is typically for corporate use, where a corporation can monitor a phone, they can also be used by parents monitoring children. But they can be installed by anyone who has the phone Google ID or Apple ID. So if you do not use your own ID on the phone and someone else can control it, then the ID owner can install whatever they want. Other apps of this nature that can be installed include location trackers and are often used by families. So you have to closely look at the apps on the phone, especially if the phone was just given to you and you don't do any app installation. App installs by file. The most common way an external hacker will hack a device is by causing the person to install an app intentionally. This is a social engineering attack. If a file is sent remotely, typically via an email or a website download, you will still need to do some actions to the file before the attack can take hold. This is usually done by social engineering. If a reason is given that seems logical to you, then you might click something. For example, if someone claims to be from your bank and tells you you have to download some security app to check on something, and you're not being aware, you could be scammed into clicking an app willingly, and then the hack is in place. Remember that a good hack usually means nothing will initially happen. Good malware will delay action for some time, so you don't remember that you did something a while ago. So don't assume that a hack was something recent. If someone asks me to install something, my alarm bells will ring loudly, and it is a big giant red flag that some social engineering is about to be done. The scams can sound legit and typically very customized to your case. For example, a typical scam that people lower their shields for is when someone is discussing an employment opportunity. So if you're aware at all times, then this is not an attack that is done without some clue to you. If an app is to be downloaded via some app store, then it is not a hack. Hacks occur when an app is sent outside of an official channel. App installs in computers. Let me switch to computer attacks for a moment, although this can also apply to phones. Computers are much more vulnerable in general to hacking attacks than a phone. The main reason for this is that the apps are not isolated from each other like they are on a phone. So an app can check out all the directories or folders on the computer and see what is loaded. Most people set up a single account on a computer, especially on Windows, and the user has administrator rights, so it will be possible to install programs in restricted areas. There are two main sources of malware that come from files: email and websites. I would say email accounts for 99% of all malware. So if you open an email attachment and you don't know where it's from, you will potentially get malware. A very common thing I've been getting a lot lately is a bunch of notices from DHL, FedEx, and UPS with an attachment for an invoice. So again, it's based on social engineering. If you're expecting a document, then you may click on that attachment. If you get a lot of messages of this nature legitimately, then it is hard to determine if it's legit. In general, I don't open attachments. If I get a message from eBay, I don't open the attachment. I'll just go to eBay and look at the message directly from there. Being smart about attachments means I am skeptical to the extreme about any attachment. Even your friends' email accounts could be hacked, so the source of the file could be legit, but the attachment may still be malware. By the way, I can send you email that can auto-download some files without even any kind of clicking. This requires a lot of examination of suspect emails. I look at the email headers closely and the domains to see if anything is fake. If the email is supposedly from FedEx and the email header shows domains that are not FedEx.com but show FedEx.hack.it, then it should provide a clue, right? Just in general, since emails are the main source of attacks, it's where your frontline battleground against hackers should be. A file can also be sent as a link. Again, it is trivial to give a website link that will not only show you the website, but also download a file automatically to your computer. Now, fortunately, all downloads nowadays on phones and computers automatically go to the downloads folder. So look in there and delete unknown files before you accidentally click on them. There are a million other ways someone can cause you to click on a file to install. I'll just give one example to give you a heads up. Let's say you have an AVI video file and you want to convert it to MP4 so you can watch it. Typically, you will have to go search for some converter program from AVI to MP4. You go to Google search and you click on the first one you see, and likely that click already downloaded some malware to your downloads folder. Then you give permission for that program to install. The problem is that a real program can be packaged inside a hacker installation package. The installation program can then install malware with administrator rights while at the same time installing a legit program. This is why you have to be careful about what apps you install and where you get it from. Even if the app is legit, it may not be the original. The installer could have been altered. This is a very common hack, by the way. A metasploit attack. Let me move on to a more sophisticated attack that can be done and leave no trace. This is through the use of some tool like metasploit or something like it. This particular attack is at the more advanced level of the spectrum. This kind of attack is done without any user intervention, user action, or social engineering. When the attacks occur, there will be no trace. In general, the hack occurs by exploiting some new zero-day flaw in your operating system. The most common flaw that is attacked is called a buffer overflow, where the memory of an executing program is corrupted and then the attacker is able to recover to a command line of the operating system. Once an attacker gets command line access, then a command interpreter called metasploit is installed, and now the computer can be remote controlled. A hacker can install programs like rats and keyloggers, replace existing programs, and put it in a long-term connection that allows the computer to talk to the attacker even after the original flaw in the OS has been eliminated with an update. The Metasploit company actually watches all the different reported 0 days and then will see if a computer is vulnerable. It keeps a database of all 0 days, so a lot of this is just trial and error of all known hacks. So if your computer or phone has not been updated in a while and a 0-day hack exists, then you will provide an entry point for a Metasploit attack. This is a super dangerous attack, and like I said, it is not detectable. An antivirus will be useless against this sort of attack. Antivirus software don't have any 0-day protections. That's why they're called 0 days. No one knows anything about them before. Let me summarize where we are. Hacking is a cat and mouse game. The hacker is constantly looking for vulnerabilities, and a hack will occur if there is a mistake somewhere. Obviously, mistakes in programming are common and cannot be guaranteed to be avoided. At least, though, I will tell you some pretty simple techniques to eliminate a hack. Although you may be hacked now, it would be a simple matter to undo the hack with a very few simple procedures. Solutions. Number 1, factory reset. In almost all cases, a factory reset will eliminate all hacks that came with the device after it's delivered from the manufacturer. This is good enough for most people. Now, it doesn't eliminate programs installed by the manufacturer to spy on you, such as Intel IME, Intel Management Engine, which is a backdoor from Intel. It doesn't eliminate programs installed by a carrier, like remote control support software. So on a phone, changing the ROM installing from stock OS or reinstalling the OS from scratch may be necessary instead of a factory reset. A factory reset only touches the data area on a phone, for example. But again, for a computer and for most phone users, a factory reset will give you the peace of mind. Whatever hack is in there, if it is not corporate or state-sponsored, it should disappear. Number 2, user rights. On a phone or a Linux computer, the main user already has restricted rights, so typically you don't have to do anything special for Linux and a smartphone. But if you're using Windows or a Mac OS, then you need to immediately create a non-administrator account on your computer and then use that on a daily basis. Don't use your admin account unless required for installing some software. This is quite important. Without administrator rights, malware will not have a way of getting executed or getting moved into a restricted location. Even if you get a metasploit attack, if the regular user has no admin rights, it may prevent the attacker from doing anything serious. This is actually the most important step to preventing an attack, and if you do this, you do not need an antivirus. I don't use a zucking antivirus. Even if you screwed up and opened up an attachment in your email, if you have no admin rights, then the attack will fail. Such a simple prevention scheme, and 99% of people don't do this. And yet you wonder why Linux is more secure. It is because on Linux, you don't log in as a root account by default. Number 3, security updates, or getting security updates. This is the way to prevent metasploit-like attacks. You need to always take the latest security updates, and the gap between a security update and the discovery of a 0-day should be as short as possible. If you think you may have been vulnerable to a 0-day, then start again with a factory reset. When in doubt, factory reset. Now, this used to be a simple thing with phones. Take the latest version and you're good to go. But on phones, contact tracing is now being installed on the latest versions of Android and iOS 13.51. So, of course, many people are not taking down the updates. Unfortunately, this is where Google and Apple can push us, because at some point, some vulnerability may be discovered and they may force the contact tracing update on us. But fortunately, I use a Google phone with no contact tracing, so I can take security updates without fear. Let me tie this up to summarize. Unfortunately, hacking is a complex thing and it is often ever-changing. Some of you have a tinfoil hat and may give more intelligence capability to a hacker than they actually have. 99.99% of all hacks are not that sophisticated. When someone describes very advanced capabilities of some potential hack, my interpretation is that you're wearing a tinfoil hat. The reason is that advanced hacks require a lot of resources. It's expensive, often requiring physical surveillance. Are you worth it? Are you a valued target? There has to be a significant benefit to waste multiple people's salaries to watch over you for long periods. So if there's no immediate benefit to expending those kinds of resources, then I will assume that you're overthinking the hack. Just follow my instructions to remove the hack and go back to normal. I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can see more of this kind of content. If there's a category of phone and computer hacks that I missed, we can discuss it in the comments below. Thank you for watching.